You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Well, welcome everybody. Another edition of Global Trade This Week. I am your host, Doug Draper, and with me is my partner in crime and co-host, Pete Mento. And we're excited. This is the post-Thanksgiving week show. A little bit, I guess, the post-Thanksgiving hangover, if you will, but always a good show. And anything very eventful for you, Pete? We were just chit-chatting about how kick-ass Omaha is. Anything else
Yeah, we were
discussed over Thanksgiving meal?
I got to tell you, man, I know you're not somebody who struggles with weight, Doug. You are a svelte, athletic gentleman. But for a guy who's been on one hell of a weight loss journey, I'm still kicking ass, everyone. It's still going well. Thanksgiving was tough, bud. I did fine. But if you're a low-carb guy and you mostly eat vegetables and meat, you know, it was a whole lot of salad and turkey, buddy. Like, looking around that table with the sweet potato casserole with brown sugar and marshmallows on top of it, I'm like, well, that clearly is not on plan. Stuffing is just basically bread. You can't eat that. Mashed potatoes, you know. Thanksgiving is first of all, it's a kick-ass meal. Let's get that out of the way. But it is not something for people who are trying to drop a couple pounds, particularly people trying to drop the last couple of pounds on their diet. So it was tough, but I made it through it, man.
Good.
And also, I did the annual viewing of the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special, and I did something I should not have done, Doug. I looked up the life and times of Charles Schwartz, and I am now officially Schultz. I'm now officially I'm just a font of knowledge on the creator of the Peanuts. I can tell you everything about the man. Did you know?
Yes, of course. I knew this was coming. So
did you know the little redheaded girl? So everything in Peanuts is loosely based on real life. So Charlie Brown was based on Charles Schultz. The little redheaded girl was a character based on a lady who worked in accounting at the cartoon publication syndicate that he worked for. And he dated her and asked her to marry him, and she said no. And married another guy that worked at the cartoon syndicate. Now, I wonder if she would eventually come to really regret that. But, it didn't really work out for him. He was big into hockey. He had a hockey tournament that he did well into his 70s. I mean, the guy was fascinating, dude. He served in the Army. During World War II. I mean, the guy was really, really interesting. So this is what happens to me. Also during Thanksgiving, I learned everything there is to know about the Murphy bed. And don't ask me how this all started, but I know everything there is to know now about Lawrence Murphy, the inventor of the Murphy bed. And it all started because he wanted to get an opera singer to come back to his room, and you weren't allowed to have women come to visit you in your bedroom, but if there wasn't a bed in the room, not a bedroom. So this was a guy who was just trying to get some super hot opera singer to come spend time with him in his place. And she said, I can't because it's your bedroom. He's like, well, what if my bed's not in my room? Bam! Right? Brilliant. He lived in San Francisco. And from there, and his great-grandson is now the president of the company, still making Murphy beds to this day. So never, ever say that a man who is with romance on his mind cannot invent anything to make it happen. By the way, he married that woman.
Wow.
So two different stories, mother of invention, romance, and all of it. I don't know, Doug. I know you hate it when I ramble. I don't.
I was about to say, the audience is saying WTF, because I personally have no idea where these conversations go out of the gate. So we got Peppermint Patty dialed in, and that interaction.
No, Peppermint Patty. Do you know why they call Peppermint Patty sir? Because when Marcy met Peppermint Patty at summer camp, she mistook her for a young man and said sir, and then was so embarrassed that she never stopped calling her that. And that is also something I learned while doing a deep dive on Charles Schultz. See, Doug, this is why you keep me around.
I know. It's great. I'm checking boxes left and right today. I tell you what.
So you are, buddy.
Well, before we jump into our topics, and you're going to lead us off, obviously, we need to say thanks to Cap Logistics. They put this together. Keenan gets a little bit of static from us on a regular basis, but seriously, he pushes the button, turns the levers, and makes this thing happen. So, anyway, that is why we are here. And Pete, let's talk about some logistics, supply
Yes,
chain,
sir.
international trade. Let's rip.
Topic number one, you may be wondering why I'm wearing my original Harvard sweatshirt that is 3 sizes too big for me now, and it's clearly old and ratty. For one thing, it's my lucky sweatshirt, so I refuse to throw it out. But second of all, it was made back when the manufacturer of this sweatshirt only made them in the United States. So this is a made in America.
Please don't take your shirt off.
You could only be so lucky, Doug. You could only, underneath this sweatshirt, my friend, is nothing but twisted steel and sex appeal.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, nothing but a jiu-jitsu fueled assassin. I was shocked to find out that when I was originally going to graduate school a bazillion years ago, much of the athletic gear that was made for Harvard was made right here in the United States. And we talk a lot on this show about the 301 tariffs and the other punitive tariffs that were put in place on Chinese imports by President Trump. All of them still in place right now with President Biden, who is nearly a year into his first term. One of the questions that I'm asked a lot is twofold. First of all, when will these tariffs end? I still don't see an end in sight. And the second question is, do we have any proof that these tariffs managed to bring manufacturing back to the United States? Mm-hmm. I still don't have proof that that was the case either. What I can tell you is that companies that are manufacturing in the United States are seeing a real tailwind and a real financial boost because of the quagmire and all the problems that we're having in the chaos in supply chain. There's one particular company I wanted to bring up that was brought up on another podcast called Origin. Origin is owned by the former Navy SEAL and jiu-jitsu expert Jocko Willink. Jocko started this with a friend of his named Pete up in Maine. They started making jiu-jitsu gis and then blue jeans, and now some very famous work boots. All the work boots are made by hand with old machines that press the leather and do all that work. And he likes to make up the point that these types of techniques of manufacturing were about to be lost. The generations that did them in the 80s and the 90s were dying off, that these have been handed off to new generation. You look at that company, Shinola in Michigan out of Detroit, who manufactures bicycles, watches, leather goods. They also make journals. The bicycles being something that I think shocked people at how well received that they were. We're seeing pockets of this in the country where there are companies who are saying American made matters to a lot of consumers who are happy to buy them. Earlier, we were talking about how I drive American cars. I drive American motorcycle. I try to buy American wherever I can. And it's sort of hysterical that I've made my career on importing things and outsourcing jobs. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite there. Mm-hmm. But you can't legislate patriotism, buddy. And until there are people who are willing to pay more for that product, which we know costs more to make here in this country, it's going to be hard for those companies to really gain that foothold that they need. What they've been fortunate is that these ocean containers are costing $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 to bring this stuff in from China. So it's made the extra cost and labor cost effective. So it's giving them an opportunity to really make a difference right now. And I think that's going to give them a chance to maybe get some of that market share. I just don't know if it'll last. And what I wanted to end that comment on here on Global Trade This Week from Cap Logistics is, at what point will bigger, more important products be available? At what point will Made in America for a cell phone happen? You know, when will we be making chips in this country and it'll matter to me? I would pay a lot more money to have a cell phone that was made in the USA, where I knew that there wasn't anything inside of it from software through hardware that was being probably, built by or supported by labor that had a component to it that was forced or had something to do with a component of slavery. And I would also be more comfortable knowing that something wasn't being used to spy on me or for cyber spying. Also, you look at American cars now, a significant portion of them are made overseas. They're just assembled here. And now that these electric scooters and electric bikes and electric whatevers are becoming an important part of how people get around, why can't we begin to expect that'll be made here as well? I don't know, Doug, are we at the point now where we can expect to see that the American consumer is going to care maybe just a percentage less about that price to maybe bring the supply chain home, so that we don't have to have this sort of chaos again in the future? I know this is something you talked about in the past, but are we at a tipping point yet, buddy?
Pete, I'll answer that with one word: no. I'll answer that in two ways. Number one, niche products that you just described, two great examples that are great sound bites on Good Morning America and Sunday morning on NBC or CBS, are phenomenal. And it's going to draw attention, and it's going to underscore the importance of reshoring back over here to the U.S. I think that is valuable. I think there's a good purpose in doing that. But you nailed it. Until there's mass not customization, until a name brand takes everything over from overseas and reshores it here into the U.S., I don't think it's really going to draw the attention. So, yeah, I think there'll be more stories. It'll be niche-y. Excuse me, but until, like the chip plant that's going in, I think Samsung said they were going to bring some chip plant into the Austin area. So it's going to take more of a wave. Maybe there's a ripple there. Yeah, I would agree with that, but it's still going to be pretty niche-y. And we're still a couple years away for people that are not going to chase cheap labor to try to find their products.
All right, buddy. We'll see. I pray to God that we're wrong. I kind of feel the same way. I think that American consumers just want to buy a bunch of crap they don't need. And in order to do that, it's got to be cheap. So yeah. I don't know how we overcome that. I know that I'm going to keep buying things that make me feel good about where they come from. And for some people, it's their organic eggs. For me, it's it's just known that not everything I own came from some place whose politics I can't support.
Yeah, agreed. Well, my first topic kind of dovetails into that one a little bit, and it's flipping over to the transportation side. And shocker, congestion and the supply chain challenges. The one thing that caught my attention and what I want to talk about this one is if you simply follow the widget through the supply chain, you will quickly see what the next bottleneck will be and what the bottleneck will be highlighted, I should say. The bottleneck is there, but as far as what will draw attention for the media and things of that nature. So what I mean is there was an article that was just kicked out earlier this week that talks about port trucking concerns. And there's long wait times and flawed appointment schedules and hours of port and labor issues and blah, 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 blah. All this stuff that you and I and our audience is very well aware of. But it hasn't made the national news because you know what's made the national news? Boats that you can see out on the water. And it's been talking about the congestion at the port. Well, now, as you follow the widget, now they're going to talk about congestion in the ports. And you know what they're going to talk about next? Congestion in the deconsolidation warehouses. And then you know what they're going to talk about? The congestion with over-the-road drivers and how there's a challenge in the trucking industry and the driver shortage. And oh, by the way, the next thing you're going to talk about is inland warehouses and how warehouses are at capacity and freight is at destination for weeks. And then you're going to see those higher inland. So just my point is, if you follow the widget and where it is in the supply chain, I could write the headlines that are going to transpire in the next 3 months. It's all about the congestion during the transit of the widget, which is great. It's creating more awareness to our supply chain and our industry. But that doesn't fix the problem. It just creates awareness, which is what we've all seen. And we've alluded to the unintended consequences, which part of it is inflation that you spoke about a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that all of a sudden there's more articles. Take the widget off the boat, now there's problems in the port. Take the widget out of the port, there's going to be problems in the warehouse. Take it out of the warehouse, there's going to be problems with the trucking. And all of that is going to be talked about more and more, which will continue to drive attention, which means the supply chain discussion is not going to end anytime soon. You and I have spoken about it. It's going to go through 2022 into 2023. But my take is follow the freight, the flow of the widget, and you'll be able to see what is the next hot topic that America is going to be hearing about from our media.
You always say connectors, buddy.
Yeah.
Right. So each one of those is the next connector in the line. And, I'll add another one to your little prophecy here. What you're eventually going to end up having is a glut of inventory. And that glut of inventory is going to continue to keep it backed up until that inventory is priced in such a way that it begins to move. Mm-hmm. So I see this ending up being a retail problem probably a year or so down the road when people realize they ordered too much stuff because of these supply chain issues. They have no place to put the stuff behind it. And now they got to get rid of the stuff that's sitting on shelves that eventually did show up. You can't script this any better than it already is. All of us who just follow, like you said, follow the widget along the supply chain. The supply chain's not changing. The supply chain is what it is because it's been built this way for the past couple of decades. And there's really nothing radically changing about it anytime soon or anytime since. So we know what the next step of it are. And we can write that script on where it's going to go from here to there. Yeah. What we're losing out on is this opportunity to try to radically change it right now in transit in order to make it better. I think people are more concerned about leveraging relationships, more concerned about looking for ways to make this thing work inside of the existing system than trying to come up with a new system. And there's just no benefit to, there's no incentive that anybody's come up with right now to try to come up with a better way. So we could be on this damn show 2 years from now, Doug, and I think we're going to be talking about the same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You make a good point. I had not thought of in my prep is that the end of the road happens. It's the road runner in the cartoon that's running. He hits the cliff. At some point, there's nowhere to push this inventory, and so there's going to be a lot of fire sales, if that's the right term to use. And we got to get rid of this inventory. It's been on our books too long. It's whatever. So that's a point I think that we'll see towards the end of next year. Good point.
Buying cheap crap, buddy. Buying cheap crap. Right? Yeah. I mean, look at all these Black Friday sales. Every indication that you're getting from people was that there was less inventory to buy, fewer things on these flash sales. Prices were not as low as years before. Whether it was a marketing technique where people were saying, hey, supply chains are difficult, prices are going to be higher, which you talked about on the show, or whether it was simply there aren't as many things to put up for sale at these lower prices. Black Friday was not as much of a free-for-all of buying things because it just simply wasn't available. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be very interested to see what the retail numbers were that come out at what point, at some point in January, right, when all is said and done, and we get a chance to look at it.
Very true. All right. We got a little halftime here that we like to jump into. Anything fun, unusual? We haven't talked about it, so I have no idea what's going to come out of your mouth right now.
Come on, man. I mean, don't you?
That's a good thing. That's what keeps the show lively. So what do you got?
You don't trust your partner? I mean,
I trust you. I just have no idea what you're about to say.
Man, this hurts a little bit, Well, as always, after our first two topics, we like to jump to halftime, brought to you by our good friends at Cap Logistics. To learn more about Cap Logistics, you can go to www.caplogistics.com. It is through their generous support that we bring you the 1 hour to 30 minutes of about 50% of me babbling and 50% of Doug actually giving you useful information. This week's halftime for me has to do with the holidays. Everyone is talking about how there isn't going to be enough for Christmas. Christmas is closed. Christmas isn't happening. And I would say unto you that the greatest feeling of all is giving. You can still give. All of that money that you've got, give. Today, as we're recording this, it is Tuesday the 30th. It is Giving Tuesday here in the United States. So maybe instead of looking for ways to buy a bunch of cheap crap that no one's going to care about a couple of days after Christmas anyway, maybe you can give something to someone who needs it in their name. I was shocked to find out that people generally do really appreciate that. Food banks, shelters, whatever your personal charity is, it might not be such a bad thing this year that instead of adding to the supply chain morass of buying a bunch of things that people don't need, that are going to end up in a landfill Instead, maybe you could find something and some kindness in your heart and give a little bit of money to people who need it. So that is my halftime. Doug, maybe we shouldn't be so selfish in a year where selfishness is driving so much madness.
I love it. If we looked at previous shows, your halftime seemed to be more passionate and heartfelt, and mine are just stupid quips that I see in the news. So
by the way, Wendy's is saying that their whole crispy fries challenge really worked out well for them, by the way. So I don't know if that was such a stupid thing to talk about, because I guess it made them a ton of money.
Yeah, well, who doesn't love crispy fries, regardless, Burger King or Wendy's? Hey, so the one thing that I want to talk about halftime is that our friends to the north, the kinder, gentler folks to the north, that they are actually following the U.S. decision to tap into their strategic reserves to deal with a massive shortage, Pete, of maple syrup.
Hell yeah.
Yes, maple syrup. I did not realize, but Quebec produces about 70% of the world's maple syrup supply. There was a 20% spike in demand because we're not going out to our favorite restaurants. We're making eggs, bacon, sausage, and pancakes, and we're drowning them in syrup. And so high demand and low yield. They said that there's been, with the climate change, the season is smaller, it's warmer up there, the trees aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So I find this funny for two reasons. One, who would have thought there was a strategic reserve? The fact that you use the word strategic reserve and maple syrup in the same comment, I think that is like a Seinfeld episode or something you'd see on The Simpsons. So the fact that Canada is aware of that and they realize that that's a huge revenue generator for the region of their country, and they have that strategic reserve, I think that's pretty amazing, and I love it. So there you go. The maple syrup is flowing. Bring it on.
I went to high school in Manchester, New Hampshire. I live in Manchester, New Hampshire. Most of my friends, their family hails from Quebec. You said it wrong, by the way.
Quebec.
Like it actually irks me that you said it wrong. Okay, so most of my friends, they have French last names because their families left farms in that province to come to Manchester, turn of the century, early part of the 20th century, to work at the many mills that we have up and down the Merrimack River here, just outside of my front window. And they love maple syrup. And you're and here in Manchester, like you think to yourself, oh, maple syrup, bro. You don't even know how much people here love maple cookies. So we have these leaf cookies where the cookies are like an Oreo, but the top looks like a maple leaf, and it's flavored with maple, and then the cream in between is maple cream. I have friends whose family will dunk them in maple syrup before they eat them. My friend Jean-Claude Poisson, right, who we call Fish, clearly, right? Because his last name is Poisson, which avec français, right? You know, it's fish. His father, for everyone's wedding, you have to have a can of real maple syrup from a particular maple syrup manufacturer in Quebec, because that's the only one he'll eat. Because when the wedding cake comes around, he cracks open his can of maple syrup and pours it all over the already sickeningly sweet wedding cake to eat maple syrup off the wedding cake. They put it in coffee. They put it on everything. Now, there's a company here in Manchester called Sconlin's Hot Dogs and Franks. And when he first started his business, it was going out of business. But a friend of his said, all these French Canadian people have just moved here. It's like 1930 or so. And they put maple syrup on anything. I bet if you put maple syrup in your hot dogs, they'd even eat that. Guess what? They did. So he started making something called Maple Leaf Franks. They're hot dogs that have maple syrup in the hot dogs. They sell like crazy here. And if you have a cookout and you have French Canadians, you better have Maple Leaf Franks. So Doug, the fact that Canada has a strategic maple syrup reserve, to me, it's like, well, of course they do. It would be like if Texas had a strategic ammunition, beer, and barbecue reserve. Like these are things that the state will not run without them. And as somebody who has befriended, been close friends with Canadians my entire life and Canadian descendant people. A life without maple syrup for these people would not be a life worth living. It would not be a life worth living. So you need to come visit so that I can apply. Or do you not like maple syrup, Doug?
No, I'm a good maple syrup guy. Not as passionate about it as you are. I've seen your body language in the last 3 minutes, the passion that you have for the sticky sweetness. So, yeah.
Oh, and I live in New Hampshire, which means Vermont maple syrup can screw right off. I will not eat it. It comes from New Hampshire, or I'm not having it. Like Maine, Massachusetts, get that garbage off of my plate. I will only eat the stuff that comes from where I'm from or from Canada. I mean, I'm very particular, right? I'm the same way with honey. It's got to be from where I'm from. Yeah. I'm going back to my whole xenophobic attitude about where I purchase my stuff, I guess. Sorry, Doug. I derailed halftime again.
All right, so this is we're going to end halftime on this one because you talk about pronunciations. So where is the hometown? Where did Muhammad Ali, where was he born and raised?
Louisville.
Say that one more time.
Louisville.
Okay, cool. All right. It's Louisville or Louisville. You got to make sure you pronounce it right. Louisville. That's the Quebec and the Quebec. So
Doug, 80% of my bloodstream is bourbon. You don't think I know how to say
all right
that word correctly? Do you know how much money I've lost on horse racing in my life? You don't think I know?
Yeah. All right.
How to say that?
Well, just thought I'd throw it out there. So
get it together, Draper.
All right,
get
buddy.
It together. All right. So my next topic is one that is sure to upset all of my fellow dirt worshipping, tree hugging, dolphin petting hippies. Nuclear power is back, baby. Oh yeah, it's back. For those of you who are not aware, nuclear power is a relatively straightforward concept. We take atoms, we bash them together, and when that happens, it releases energy, which generally speaking, we use to create steam. So it boils water, which makes steam. That steam creates a movement of a form or another, which then powers electric motor or some other sort of conveyance. But nuclear power can then go from there to very complicated ways of creating energy. It is how the sun works. It's how it's the simplest form of the mass creation of energy. And in my opinion, it is the height of human achievement that we have found ways to harness the atom. And honestly, it's an American concept that we have mastered, more so than any other part of the world. But it's the rest of the world that continues to embrace its production and its furtherance. At the moment, as Keenan pointed out in the beginning of our conversations today, it is India and China who continue to invest in it and continue to create the ability to generate this power, but they're doing it with far outdated technology. They're not using the innovation that is currently being produced here in the United States. But the United States is not creating more and more nuclear power because for the most part, people who have no friggin' clue what they're talking about tend to oppose it. Whenever I bring this up at dinner parties, it's usually someone who drives a Tesla or a Prius, which is an important part of this conversation, Doug.
Yeah.
Who will look me in the eye and say that it's dirty and disgusting and that nuclear power is unsafe. And to them, I say, you have no idea what you're talking about, you moron. Nuclear power is safe and effective. And here in America, the nuclear power that we actually employ, the waste is turned into more energy producing material that creates more nuclear power. We have very little waste, as a matter of fact. And why is that important? Because as what we use most of our energy for in this country, cars, the production and movement of things that we consume for no good reason, continues, much of that electricity could actually be generated through nuclear plants and done in a way that's safe and effective. Why are we letting other countries take a technology that we're great at, embrace it, and use it to go forward? It eludes me. If we're going to get serious about clean energy, part of that answer needs to be nuclear. And I defy anyone to tell me otherwise.
Well, I won't tell you otherwise, Pete, but I have 3 words. I guess it's going to be 4 words. That is always the struggle with getting nuclear engaged in the U.S. One is, well, I don't even know how many words this is. 3 concepts. 3 Mile Island.
AOC? Oh,
3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and the Manhattan Project. Only people all of those are negative. All of those created problems. All of those are bad reactions, right? No pun intended. And so the perception from the US, including myself to some degree, is I don't really get it. I don't understand how you can smash an atom because I can't see it, but I can see coal. I can touch coal. I can see it being burned. Nuclear is kind of a little bit like crypto, and I don't understand how it works. And oh, by the way, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and oh my God, it killed hundreds of thousands of people with our nuclear bomb. So there needs to be one hell of an ad campaign and a marketing campaign to get the general public over the hump and understanding that it is clean, safe, and a viable option moving forward to help combat global warming and climate change.
How many people died in the 3 Mile Island incident?
I have no idea, but I know it was bad.
None.
Yeah.
How many people were injured in the 3 Mile Island incident?
Hey, this isn't a debate. I'm just talking about perception.
No. I just let's do this. How many people were injured in the 3 Mile Island incident?
7.
None. So to date, in the United States, how many people have died or been injured because of accidents, not at the plant, outside of the plant, because of nuclear power?
I have a feeling you're going to say 0.
That's correct. Now, how many have died because we've had to go out there? Good friends of mine that work on ships to drill for oil, to drill for natural gas. How many times are we going to ruin our environment because we've got to drill for stuff and then put it in pipelines? How many times do we have to ruin this world because of fossil fuels? Because we've got to spill it left and right. And then on Chernobyl, let's talk about Chernobyl. Let's just talk about old, outdated crap, people making bad decisions. Let's talk about the Russian attitude towards nuclear, harnessing the atom. Let's talk about Fukushima and what went on there, right? Bad decisions about how they built up something and where they put it. I can keep going on for hours and hours and hours on crap technology and how we do it better. But if you want to continue, burn coal, if you want to continue to say that hydro and making these big, massive wind farms that are in and of themselves have to be strip mined in order to get what you need, and have kids out and, God knows where digging up things that are ruining their lives and the environment as well. Just keep it going, buddy. Smash atoms, make electricity, buy a Tesla. See? There you have it.
Yeah.
You don't even get me started, Doug. Don't even get me started. If it's so bad, why is it okay for our Navy to basically have every single aircraft carrier and all of our submarines going around the world with 0 incidents? Absolutely none. I've been on those ships. They're a marvel. They're an absolute marvel, and they work absolutely incredibly for years and years and years and years and years. Well, I can't wait for the comments on this. Bring it on. Come on.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's misunderstood. And the marketing campaign that we need to come up with is simply called Smash Atoms.
Or if you don't know what you're talking about, shut your mouth. I think that should also be what it is, right?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Well, my last topic and my mic drop goes well with that. Pete, we always say literally we have no idea what we're going to talk about. I found out your topics probably 30 seconds before we started the show, which validates the great banter back and forth and the fact that we have good chemistry rolling. So I had no idea you were going to talk about nuclear, and I'm going to talk about foldable ocean containers. And there is a connection, which is related to saving the environment, dealing with climate change, and it's real. So the technologies have been around for years, but there's a couple of companies out there that have started to embrace it, and it's formidable savings. So there is from Boston Consulting Group, right? I got to cite my sources just to make sure I don't do anything screwy. They said about 27% of all the containers moving in the system are empty. And if they can find a way to reduce the number of the footprint of the ocean container, think about how much CO2 and carbon emissions can be reduced. So the gist of it is you fold a container, you can get 4 containers stacked on top of each other, foldable containers like a sandwich in the same amount of space as a traditional standard ocean container. So we can go into to all those details, but I love it because there are a couple of companies out there that are leading their marketing campaign with the sustainability and the CO2 emissions play, which is happening right now. People want to hear it. People are buying into it more and more and more. So I think you're going to see the foldable ocean container gain a little bit of momentum in the upcoming years. I don't think it's going to be a 2022 prediction that we'll come up with, but I think it's ingenious. I really like the idea, and it is primed right now to really underscore the ability for that to be sustainable and help benefit our the climate control that we're working on. So I love it. We've gotten creative. We're pushing boundaries. That's how you make change in life and in the world, and foldable containers. I'm a believer.
Yeah, I think it's odd though, Doug, right? That every other type of container we can think of, there's been a move towards folding it. There's been a move towards trying to find a way to compact it during its transit, except for containers. And we talked about this on an earlier show. There's actually regulatory issues that stop it from being adopted. But if you ask the people, and I have, at the FMC, I've asked people in IMO, I've asked people that deal with IMDG, I've asked them why. No one can give you a really good answer. So is this because the people that make steel containers are dealing with some kind of regulatory capture? I don't know. Is it because no one's bothered to just really push hard to get a change here? I don't know. Is it because it's going to be an expensive conversion? Again, I don't know. But what I do know is this, in the face of this issue, it just makes too much sense for us not to consider it. It's great for the environment. It sounds like it'd be an excellent use for recycled plastic. It would appear to be something that we could make stronger, lighter, and probably last longer than steel. And eventually it would allow us to deal with climate change and CO2 emissions in a positive way in a part of logistics that, from what I understand, plays a massive, massive role in us being a villain and logistics being a villain when it comes to CO2 emissions. So Doug, I don't have a negative thing to say about what you're saying, except that I'm at a real loss to try to understand why we just can't get someone to maybe be the first actor, someone to step up, a nation state, and say, we really want to see this happen.
Yeah, I think it's coming. The wave that will help carry this is the whole sustainability and climate change. Every big player is getting on board. And you made a comment a couple weeks ago about the electronic charging stations at cars that get priority parking closer to the door, and you equated that to priority unloading with vessels that have sustainable fuel usage. I could see this being the same. Hey, I'm Nike or somebody else, and I want 5 or 6 different tangible ways that you are helping to be more sustainable and reduce CO2 emissions, and this could be one of those. So I think it's going to gain momentum simply because of the awareness that's going on. So thank you for agreeing with the premise.
Totally. Yeah, but just imagine, Doug, if you were to say, like you just did, your vessel's going to get to port first. So we're going to have priority. Everyone else waits in line. Then your container's on top of the stack, so it comes off first. Then you get a chassis before anybody else. Oh my gosh. That right now, I got a lot of people I work with that would be kicking each other down flights of steps to be the first in line for that. They would pay a reasonably high increase on whatever the market rate was. Yeah. Because it's end of peak season right now, and they're doing anything they can for an advantage. So that could be the way forward, buddy.
It'll be fun. Cool. All right. I'd say that was a good show. We'll call it a wrap.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Well, as always, we can't do what we do without the generous support and backing of our good friends at Cap Logistics, which allows this show to happen through both their financial support and the infrastructure that they provide. Part of that support is Keenan back at the booth, who, between making sure that he both conditions, washes, and braids his hair, make sure that all the buttons and baubles and doodads are working properly. Thank you, Keenan. I can't do this without all the folks that are constantly asking questions and letting us know that they do watch it. Tell your friends, let them all know that we're on here. Doug, you're the greatest. You are the wind beneath my wings. You are the shrimp in my gumbo. And I can't wait for another edition next week of Global Trade This Week. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Well said. Take care, guys.